What is poppin', guys? Kyle here, back with another, looks like it's about to be, in this video, another just off-the-cuff one again, and this is something that was on my mind. So, recently I saw a video about R-Truth, and it was really facts about how, R-Truth is still a jobber, and that's what we're going to get into in this video. Today we're going to be talking about R-Truth. So, while I was on my hiatus from doing actual videos or even commentary videos on this channel, R-Truth had gone released right after Saturday night's main event, like pretty much like a week after it, right? So let's break down the timeline here. So he had a match with John Cena at Saturday night's main event, right? Then the week after on SmackDown, he had a match with, I'm going to say Jeff Cobb or Corner Cobb or JC Mateo, whatever you want to call him, right? So JC Mateo, is basically a jobber that is now, so he's basically like a jobber or a lackey to Solo Sikoa now, right? Well, R-Truth drops a match to him, so JC Mateo wins that match. Then the next day, R-Truth gets released. Now, every wrestling fan, even people backstage, everybody was outraged by this. They're like, R-Truth is funny. We like R-Truth, right? And I remember it was especially odd when they released him because they had just had a match with him at Saturday night's main event, right? Usually, when people get released, right? Usually they're, slowly phased out of TV, right? Well, nope, not for R-Truth. He literally just got, one day he was on TV, the next he was off. It basically was like that. One day he was on the roster, the next he wasn't. And there's been a lot of different theories on, as for why R-Truth got released. I mean, the main theory, I think, and it's one that a lot of people say, and I agree with, is that it's simple. TKO's in debt. This is the one thing now with WWE now being owned by TKO. It's that, they have to deal with another company's debt, right? Because they're owned by another company now, right? So, if TKO, for example, right, is in debt, right, then that means WWE has to pay into their debt. So, right, when push comes to shove, right, and, they need money for whatever reason, for example, to pay off the debt, right, then that's when the hard decisions have to come, and that's when they're like, okay, well, R-Truth, this is a guy that I've heard that his contract was pretty big. Now, if it's still big now, I don't know. I didn't get that far into it, but since he's been with the company so long, it's you gotta imagine he's been making some kind of bag, right? He's gotta have some dough, right? But anyways, right, now we're back onto the topic again, right? So because of the backlash, now as for why he got rehired, I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I don't know Triple H personally. It's not like, hey, Triple H, why did you fire R-Truth, right? And that's another thing, too. The IWC and just everybody in general, they didn't know who to blame for it. They're like, okay, well, was it TKO's fault that R-Truth got fired? Is it WWE's fault? WWE themselves, people and guys like Triple H that got him fired? Now, if I had to say, honestly, I think this is the safest option, but I think it was just both of them combined, because I think the theory that Nick Khan and Triple H go hand in hand on this, right, let's say, right, Nick Khan is the guy on the board of TKO, right? So he has to come up with decisions okay, well, this guy's doing that well, that guy, he's the guy who looks at the analytics, right? And if he looks at the analytics and sees that, okay, well, R-Truth isn't doing that well, or, he's a jobber, right? Or, this guy, right? Then he gives the recommendation to Triple H saying, okay, well, maybe we should fire this guy, or, maybe we should cut back on Roman Reigns' contract a little bit. That's something else I heard about, too, when, I might make a video about that one, too, but I also want to make a video about, who's responsible for the booking, because it seems like nobody really, at least out there, wants to, hear who really is responsible for it, where I do think I have an answer for that question, but that's a video for another day. But who is responsible for R-Truth being fired? If I had to say, it's Nick Khan and Triple H. Nick Khan, he's just trying to cut the budget. I'm not saying he has anything, against R-Truth or anything. Now, Triple H might have something against R-Truth, and that's another video that I could come up with, too. It's you see, when you're off YouTube for a while, it's like you start to really come up with videos and stuff like when you're gone, or whatever. It's like, you start to come up with just like random video ideas. It's like, oh, well, what about Triple H? Like there's so much to talk about in the wrestling space, So, anyways, back to the video at hand. So, because of the backlash of everybody saying that they wanted R-Truth back, right? I guess you could say they finally listened to the fans for once, and they brought back R-Truth to WWE. They gave him another contract, and what does he do when he comes back? So, at Money in the Bank, this was the first time we saw him, right? So, he was in a hood, and he basically beat up John Cena and just basically interfered in the match, right? And this was interesting because, for a while, and I would say pretty much since his second stint in WWE, he's been a, comedy character, right? So, to see him, get in the ring and start beating up on John Cena, that is definitely something that, you have to, for. And then on the Raw, I think it was the Raw after Money in the Bank, he stood on top of the announce table and then said, "I am the truth. I am Ron Killings," right? And he then proceeded to cut his hair, right? Signifying that, this is a different R-Truth now, this isn't R-Truth. This is now Ron Killings. And this got me really excited. I'm like, because here's the thing, right? So throughout this whole experience of R-Truth being fired and stuff, I've been seeing stuff in my feed or whatever about R-Truth, this guy has actually been around, right? For, I saw one post where it said that R-Truth has been around since, the Attitude Era, right? And that's true. He was literally K-Quick back then, right? So this guy's been around for a while. And, he was in TNA for a little bit there. Then he came back to WWE in 2008, right? So, I was looking back on that material that he was doing in TNA, and his first promo in TNA was awesome. So I was thinking, right, with this new Ron Killings run, I was like, if we're getting this R-Truth, I'm all in for it. It's like buy me a front row ticket to this, right? But it turns out now, right? So John Cena actually, responded to R-Truth, gave him a match on SmackDown. That ended, with CM Punk interfering, and then that started the, it started the pipe bomb, Cena's pipe bomb, that is. And then we're up to here now with last week's SmackDown. R-Truth has right, so R-Truth still wants to beat up John Cena, right? We don't know why he wants to beat up John Cena, but we just know he wants to beat up John Cena, I think this is the first time ever where he's like, I want to get back at somebody, or, I want to be taken seriously, which signifies a change in his character from being a comedy jobber, right? So, what does Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce do? They give him Aleister Black instead. And that brings us up now to the present day. So, now we're at the point now where R-Truth has been back for about 2 or 3 weeks. This thing happened at around the time of Saturday night's main event, so he came back around Money in the Bank. So it's now been almost a month since R-Truth has been back in WWE. And, I've honestly sat down today, or, I was just thinking about this. It's like, what have they done with R-Truth since he came back? And you want to know the truth, guys? I'm just being real here. It's like, they have done nothing with R-Truth. This guy is still a jobber. And, that's probably going to be the title or the selling point of this video, is that this guy is still a jobber. And we thought, right, with R-Truth coming back, oh, well, maybe he might get a run this time. Now, I actually, if I was thinking, right, if they were going to have him be like his version of his character in TNA, then yeah, definitely put the WWE Championship on him. It may sound crazy, to put the belt on a 53-year-old guy, but, we've seen crazier over the past year. I mean, cough, cough, look at Cody Rhodes here. He had the belt for a year. So, putting the belt on that version of R-Truth wouldn't have been the wildest thing ever. It would have been decently entertaining, in fact, I think. But, no. And here's the other thing that we're looking at, too. Where is the love for R-Truth? It's like, right, this is one thing about the wrestling community. It's like, I get it, they were really passionate about, they're like, we want R-Truth back, we like R-Truth. But here's the thing now. It's been a month since he's been back, pretty much. And nobody's saying a peep about him right now. Nobody's saying a peep about his booking. I'm not hearing noise about, oh, they should have gave R-Truth more, they should have done more. It's like, people are just happy with him just being in the company, whatever. And I'm going to be real here. If he's going to be in this role that he's in right now, like as constructed by WWE right now, then I don't want him in the company. If he's going to be in the company, then I wanted him to have a new character. And the thing was that we were promised that, right? When he came back and, cut his hair saying, this is the truth now, right? We were thinking like, okay, we're going to get a new character now. Well, another thing with this thing too now where he's going after John Cena is that he doesn't feel like new or anything. It doesn't feel like he's changed really. It just feels like a version of R-Truth that's angry, right? And that's essentially what it is. It's not like R-Truth is out here like, being like Dr. Thugonomics Cena, right? It's not like he switched it up or anything drastically, right? But it's enough of a change to like, when it happened, it gave me a little bit of a promise to like, okay, maybe this is on the right track with him. And I'll be real about something too. Again, you may think that like I don't like his version of being a comedic character. No, don't get me wrong. I liked that version of R-Truth. I thought those segments that he was in and all the stuff with him being related to a comedy character was funny. But after a while, it's like, you've been doing the same thing forever, dog. It's like, it's like the Dr. Thugonomics, It's like, yeah, that gimmick was great, but, he didn't roll with that forever. It's like with this version of R-Truth, it's like he was basically a clown forever, right? It's like, it gets old after a certain point. And I think, literally like this year, it's like we were getting sick of that. I mean, at least I was. Like, I was getting sick of that. It's like he's been the same character for like 15 years. It's like, when's he going to get something out of this? And especially if you've seen him in TNA, it's like, he's capable of much more. That he is really just, when you really look at it when it comes down to in the history books, it's like, what you're going to see is that R-Truth's career, it kind of started off hot there, but once he got to TNA, he picked up a little bit. He had some pretty good wins there in TNA, but then once he got to WWE, it seemed like things were going to get hot, but then he just got stuck into the same hole of playing the same character for 15 years. That's what his legacy is going to look like. And as for his future, I hope that he gets a decent push, but, based off this iteration and just based off Triple H and we can get into Triple H in a minute, but I think Triple H is I think he's secretly trying to bury R-Truth, like trying to get him out of the way. It kind of feels like now they're just responding to backlash, like, oh, we messed up or whatever, so let's bring back R-Truth and then just make him a jobber like as he was before, right? Not change anything about him, right? That's basically what they're rolling with. Hoping that none of us noticed, and hoping that none of us noticed Triple H's mistake of firing R-Truth. Now, you may be like, well, Kyle, didn't you say you didn't like R-Truth's character? It got stale after a while. Why are you saying now you wanted R-Truth released or you didn't want him released? Well, here's the thing, right? If he's going to get released and then just thrown back into the cycle again, then that means a change is going to happen. Or at least I would hope a change is going to happen, right? But the thing is that it doesn't look like that hasn't happened, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen for the foreseeable future with him. And all the people that were rallying for him to come back, all this stuff, now it's like all of a sudden they just don't care. Or at least it just feels like they don't care anymore. And, it could be due to because here's the thing with humans, right? It's like, if we have something, then we are going to take it for granted. That's pretty much how most humans work. So I get why, people are like, oh, whatever, he's back, whatever. Like, they're not caring about, his booking or whatever. But if you're somebody that really cares about him and, because here's the thing, though. It's like, even though I didn't like R-Truth's character or got stale, I still thought R-Truth himself was a good wrestler. And the thing that I also will mention, too, just because I say somebody's a jobber, that doesn't mean I don't like him. Now, it's usually like when you say somebody's a jobber, that means it's like you're giving the connotation that like, oh, that means you think they suck or whatever. Now, if you're a jobber, that means you suck. That means you're like somebody that's not, used enough, or it's like you're just barely scraping by for a roster spot, right? And just because that's the case, there are good wrestlers that are jobbers, there are good wrestlers that have been jobbers. So don't get it twisted. Just because somebody's a jobber doesn't mean they're bad, or that doesn't mean they couldn't be good, right? Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that before we go here. And like that said there, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like the stuff that I'm doing here, the new switch up and new change in the content, of course, subscribe, like, comment, you know the stuff to do. If you like this stuff, do your thing. And remember, guys, we the ones.